So what do you get when you combine Daredevil, Drive, Oldboy, and The Punisher? You get this show. I watched this series for the first time not long ago. It was recommended to me on Netflix, and after seeing that it had good reviews online, I decided to check it out. Though I've only seen the first season so far, as season 2 isn't available on Netflix, I found this series to be very enjoyable, gripping, and I was satisfied with what I watched. I also felt like this show would be perfect for my YouTube channel, as I have covered a lot of similar action films and shows on here, which is why I've decided to make a video on it. So what's Taxi Driver about, and why do I think you should give this series a chance? Let's get into it. Before we continue with the video, I'd just like to say that my debut science fiction novel is out now, link in the description below. Now, on with the rest of the video. Based on a popular webtoon, this series is an action drama which debuted in 2021. The series stars Lee Je-hoon in the role of Kim Do-gi. Do-gi is a former Special Forces soldier turned taxi driver whose mother was murdered several years ago. He desires revenge, but unfortunately for him, the killer dies in prison, and he's unable to take his revenge. As it turns out, the company he works for, Rainbow Taxi, is a front for a small group of vigilantes that Do-gi is recruited into, led by the company's owner, Jang Sun-chul. This group, which includes An Go-yoon, Choi Kyung-gu, and Park Jin-yoon, help their vulnerable clients get revenge on those who wronged them or got insufficient punishment. The series follows Do-gi and the rest of his crew as they help innocent people who are wronged by criminals or those in power, while being investigated by a prosecutor named Kane Hana, hot on their tail. One fact that I found very interesting about this show is that the events that take place are loosely inspired by real crimes that occurred in South Korea. After watching the show, I decided to read about these true stories, and I honestly found myself very shocked by them. In particular, I was very disturbed by the story which inspired the first episode, the slavery on the salt farms of Purple Island. I'm not going to get into the details here, but the real-life story was very horrific, and I was also angered to find out that even the police were helping the abusers and criminals involved. Some other examples of crimes that inspired this show, which again I won't be covering in depth here, but you can look them up after you watch this video, are the Cho Do-soon case, the WeDisc scandal, and school bullying, all of which were also very shocking, and the show paralleled those real-life cases far more closely than I expected. This show deals with a lot of dark themes, with the most upsetting for me personally being the storyline about Go-eun's sister, which I found to be very heartbreaking, but I won't spoil it here. However, the show doesn't feel unbearable to watch. The show somehow manages to balance the disturbing themes, the heartbreaking emotional storyline, with moments of levity and fun. In particular, the main cast of characters are all very likable and they have great chemistry with each other. While protagonist Do-gi is more on the brooding and colder side, the rest of the main cast are all very friendly and come across as the kinds of people who would make for great friends that you would feel completely comfortable and at ease around. This show has a great balance of action scenes, emotional scenes, and humor. By the time I finished the first season, I definitely felt very endeared to the main cast of characters. Even Do-gi, who I feel like as a protagonist truly grows on you the more the series goes on. Speaking of Do-gi, I also like how we got to see different sides to him throughout the series. Despite having this cold and tough exterior, you can tell that the character also has a sense of humor and a playful side to him through some of the fake identities he assumes while working undercover, such as a spineless and cowardly IT professional, a smarmy substitute teacher, a shady, gravelly voiced burner phone peddler, and more. Other characters I thought were particularly noteworthy are Jang Sun-chul and Kane Hana. Starting off with my thoughts on Jane Sunchul, leader of the Rainbow Taxi crew, I think what I like the most about his character is that he comes across as a kindly old man, but there is a lot of darkness underneath the surface. The core of Jane Sunchul's character is that he is a good person who has been wounded, damaged by the tragedy in his past. Although he leads this small group of vigilantes with good intentions, the darker aspects of his character reveal themselves through the inhumane ways he punishes the criminals they target. Jane Sunchul may be a good man, but he has allowed himself to be twisted and contorted far too much by the anger within himself. I also really liked the actor, Kim Yoisun. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. The only other thing I've seen this actor in is Mr. Sunshine, which is a series I'm also considering making a video about someday, where he played a much more villainous character. So it was great to see him play a significantly more likable, good character in this show, and therefore be introduced to a different side of his acting. As for Kane Hana, portrayed by Esom, I don't know how to pronounce her name either. I like this character because I feel like she was a necessary inclusion in the story. She serves as a contrast to the rest of the main cast, a fundamentally good person, just like the rest of them, but while the Rainbow Taxi crew accomplish their goals in a way that's not only illegal but also ethically questionable, Hana works within the confines of the law and therefore has much stronger ethical boundaries. Not only does she force the audience and the main cast to question whether they're doing the right thing or not, but Hana's boundaries are also pushed in return. Her outlook on the law and morality are also questioned. The inclusion of Hana in the story adds a layer of nuance and complexity to the story, as both Hana and the Rainbow Taxi crew are forced to see things from each other's perspective, with Hana learning why these characters feel the need to take the law in their own hands, while Dogi and the rest of the crew come to realize why their methods might not be entirely just. This leads me to discussing another thing I liked about this series, the moral ambiguity of the show and how the story doesn't hesitate raising questions about the ethicality of vigilantism. Taxi Driver explores the subject matter of vigilantism quite extensively, questioning whether vigilantism is morally justifiable when the legal system fails to punish criminals, allowing them to slip through the cracks. Rainbow Taxi's clients are all victims reaching out to Rainbow Taxi because they've been hurt, mistreated, and the law has failed to protect them or provide any meaningful justice. However, despite the noble actions of the main cast and their desire to make things right for other people after all of the tragedy in their pasts, their actions have repercussions. Obviously, violent retribution takes mental toll on them, but most notably, their vigilantism also comes back to haunt them, making things worse for themselves in the long run. I felt like this added an extra layer of tension to the later episodes, seeing the repercussions of their past actions coming back to haunt them, make their lives a living hell, and making you think to yourself, holy shit, how are they going to get themselves out of this mess? Although, despite the questionable ethics of their work, the Rainbow Taxi crew do indeed improve the lives of others for the better. All of the victims throughout the show are portrayed in a very empathetic light, highlighting the intense suffering they endured through flashbacks. Seeing these people who have been oppressed by criminals and people in power get the justice they need is very cathartic, and even though the actions of the Rainbow Taxi crew are presented as morally grey, the lives of all these victims would be so much more bleak and hopeless without them. Despite the questionable actions that Rainbow Taxi take throughout the story, you still root for them to succeed because of how they bring justice to vulnerable people in need. Another detail I really liked is how the show places an emphasis on the healing of our main cast. Every single person in the Rainbow Taxi crew are all suffering due to trauma and tragedy in their pasts. which is why they became vigilantes in the first place. They can't get their revenge on the people who did them wrong, so instead they want to make things right by helping other victims get their revenge. As the show goes on, each of the characters slowly, gradually find a way to make peace with their trauma and learn how to heal the wounds within themselves. Especially Kim Do-gi and Jang Sun-chul, who both start off as deeply troubled, scarred, and wounded characters, but by the end of the series find personal redemption, which results in them feeling so much more peaceful than they were before. It's a very solid character arc that I feel the writer has executed pretty well, and in a way it feels like Rainbow Taxi was a necessary stepping stone for them to take in the journey of their lives in order for them to find healing and undergo personal growth. The last topic I'd like to cover in this video is the action. The fight scenes in this show mainly revolve around hand-to-hand combat and martial arts, as firearms are very rare in real-life South Korea. The action is very gritty, grounded, and realistic, reminding me a lot of the Daredevil Netflix series, as much like in Daredevil, the action is set in a lot of confined, claustrophobic spaces. Being a former Special Forces soldier, Do-gi is the one who does most of the fighting and dirty work, whereas the rest of the crew handle other responsibilities. Do-gi is literally a one-man army in the show, dispatching multiple opponents at once, sometimes even using the environment to his advantage. I feel like the action in Taxi Driver is serviceable. The fight choreography is nothing you probably haven't already seen before. It didn't really blow my mind or anything, but the main thing I like about it is that it felt real, authentic, and suited the show's vibe very well. I also appreciated that the action felt sparing rather than constantly bombarding you with tons of action all the time, as it helped make the fight scenes feel more noteworthy and impactful whenever they occurred. But like I said, I feel like the action didn't really blow my mind or anything. It was just simply serviceable for what it was, and that's all it needed to be. As much as I really enjoy action media, when it comes to Taxi Driver, I find more value in the themes, writing, and characters, especially the characters, as I feel like the show wouldn't have been nearly as endearing or likable as it was without characters as good as the main cast. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Taxi Driver. It's overall a very fun show that I would recommend if you need something action-packed to binge over the course of a week, and I would especially recommend it if you want to see a show with a main cast of likable, endearing, and empathetic characters. I haven't seen the second season because I don't really know where to watch it, so I'm unaware if season 2 is as good as the first or not. But I feel like season 1 is a complete enough standalone story. By the end of season 1, all loose ends are wrapped up rather neatly, so I feel satisfied and content enough with what I got. But how about you? Have you seen the show, or are you interested in checking it out sometime? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to like the video if you enjoyed. If you're interested in seeing more from me, I cover a lot of movies, shows, video games, and other pop culture that I enjoy on this channel. So if that sounds like content you'd enjoy, feel free to subscribe. I'm also an author, so if you're interested in reading something new, whether that may be sci-fi, fantasy, etc., then feel free to check out my work. Links in the description below. But with all that being said, thank you so much for checking out my video, and hopefully I'll see you again in the next one.